Jon Stewart is one of my favorite political commentators. I used to watch him on The Daily Show before he handed over the reins to Trevor Noah, and as soon as he rejoined the media landscape appearing on The Daily Show and The Weekly Show, I resumed watching. This week's episode, at time of writing, was Jon Stewart discussing with Richard Reeves and Annie Lowrey why they think the Democrats lost the recent USA election. The first half of the episode is all things I've heard before. The Democrats didn't communicate their accomplishments during the Biden administration, the confusion of the candidate switch, the economy, and so on. About halfway through, they said this.
What she's talking about is the real implications of what's been done post-Roe have been millions of women have lost the power of choice and control over their reproductive outcomes. Some have died. There have been some horrific outcomes. And here we are in an election where we're talking about men just didn't feel seen. And now they feel seen. And you're like, wait, why are we worried about how seen, so in your research and what you've seen, what have been the implications of men not being seen, and why do they feel so disconnected and disaffected when, as Annie is saying, the real policy implications, the real tragic implications have been roiling women?
Excuse me, John, let me spit back what you just said as a hypothetical. In 2034, Democrats in power, the Supreme Court decides interracial marriage isn't legal anymore. For 2 years, the Democrats in power do nothing to push back on that. Then during the 2036 elections, it sounds like your solution to this civil rights issue is for the populace to vote in the Democrats again. Explain it to me like I'm 5, how the F does that bring back interracial marriage? Oh, but, Zetesk. You don't understand, the Supreme Court was stacked with a bunch of Republicans, we couldn't have done anything to stop them. Excuses. First off, the Democrats have had supermajorities several times since Roe v. Wade, and they decided not to codify it into law. Secondly, the number of seats on the Supreme Court is changeable, has been changed in the past, and people have been advocating for increasing the number of judges for more than 10 years, across 2 Democratic presidencies. Thirdly, Supreme Court judge appointments are lifelong, which sucks, but there is a loophole where you can shift them to a different federal court without violating the Constitution. Fourthly, Biden and Kamala continue to do nothing to protect abortion rights even now while they are still in power, so why the hell would anyone believe empty promises to do something about it next year? Did they even promise anything? Fifthly, if the Biden presidency couldn't save Roe v. Wade because of the Supreme Court stacking, then you're really advocating that we need to keep electing Democrats every election until 5 members of the Supreme Court die so a Democrat can pick their replacement. That could take decades. Are you expecting us to be okay with our rights being stripped away by a Republican Supreme Court under Democratic White Houses for the next 40 years? If that is what you're saying, that the White House is powerless to stop the Supreme Court, and you're refusing to use any of the peaceful strategies to pack the Supreme Court with Democrats, then I guess the only remaining option is guillotines. Stop blaming Republicans for Roe v. Wade being overturned. That is like blaming the opposing hockey team for scoring. You oppose them, it is the goalie's job to prevent him from scoring. Moving on to the point about men not feeling seen. I have only heard about this third hand. Have any men actually said in their own words that this is why they voted for Trump or why they abstained from voting? I've heard thousands of people saying they abstained from voting because neither side represents their interests. Which party is offering to reduce military spending? Neither. Which party is offering to halt weapons shipments and financial aid to Israel? Neither. Which party is offering rent controls or protections against grocery store price gouging? Neither. Which party advocates for higher corporate taxes and lower income taxes? Neither. Which party is offering single-payer healthcare? Neither. Which party is offering to house the homeless? Neither. Which party is offering a living wage? Neither. Which party is offering a wealth tax, or a negative income tax, or increasing welfare funding? Neither. Which party is offering to break up the monopolies on internet service providers, insurance companies, meat producers, rental market collusion algorithms, online shopping, or the entertainment industry? Neither. This isn't about men not feeling seen. This is about the middle class being systematically dismantled by both ruling parties to funnel money into the hands of the ruling class and leave people starving and in debt for their entire lives. Voter participation in this election was below 60%, and the winning candidate got slightly less than half of that. If those other 40% of people counted as a vote of no confidence, then the vote of no confidence would win and we'd need a second election where all of the previous candidates are not eligible to run. After the main interview, Jon and his team briefly discuss what was said by the guests before ending each episode. In this one, they said,
we were laying out the case, right, about why men didn't go for it. And I think Annie very passionately, very cohesively, very powerfully laid out the stakes for women.
Mm-hmm.
And it really was, one of those where it's like, yeah, I guess nobody, I guess it was important to some people, but, men, I think men probably agreed, but then they thought, well, I'd really like to do the Trump dance.
Probably.
I know that really stood out to me. I do hear what Richard is saying, that a group of people were not addressed like men. I will say women have not felt necessarily addressed for a pretty long time.
Interjecting here, maybe if neither men nor women felt addressed, maybe it isn't about sex and we need to consider what factor is common among all the groups not being addressed. Class, maybe?
I also want to raise the point that two things can be true at once. It can be true that men were not addressed. It can also be true that there's some sexism and racism
baked into the cake.
Right. Every election, the person who has spent the most money has won, except in 2 cases. The women. Just saying.
Interjecting again, this could be evidence of sexism, yes. However, do we really want to prop up the system where the party that spends the most money wins almost every time? That sounds a little too rigged to me.
Is that true?
Yeah.
So are you suggesting that the women were spending their money frivolously? Is that what you were saying?
Ladies be shopping?
Lauren, that is so sexist that I am shocked.
I was hoping you would understand my takeaway. No, I think 2 things can be true, and it's just not the case that the country is not sexist.
I'm sort of the mind that the Democrats lost rather than Trump won.
Why are you asking why men didn't vote for Democrats? What about why women didn't vote for Democrats? Trump did better with young women in 2024 than he did in 2020, and although women as an aggregate still voted more for Democrats than Republicans, the margin was smaller than before. And, just like the last 6 elections, more white women voted Republican compared to white women voting Democrat. Why was voter turnout so much lower than in 2020? Of the voting age population, 58.8% in 2024 versus 62.8% in 2020 according to Wikipedia. That extra 10 million votes may have swung a different result. Even if we look at voting eligible population, which is less than the voting age population, we're still looking at 65.8% in 2020 versus 63.7% in 2024. That's still almost 5 million extra votes. One more thing, to address the title of Jon's video. The Democrats are not the left. If they were left, they would be anti-corporation. If they were left, they would be thinking of ways to adapt the economy to short work weeks so that automation would be seen as a good thing for humanity instead of something that leads to poverty. If they were the left, they would advocate for themselves and other politicians to be paid minimum wage. If they were the left, they would cut military spending by 99%, leaving only enough behind to maintain nuclear submarines and reserves. There is no such thing as a leftist military invasion of a sovereign nation halfway across the world. Any organization claiming to be leftist that invades another country is automatically revealed to be non-leftist. If they were leftist, millionaires and homeless people would not exist in the same country, let alone billionaires. So, why did millions of people, both men and women of all races, abandon the Democratic Party? I advocate that the reason is because the Democratic Party is not leftist. The people already tried voting for 90% Hitler to prevent 95% Hitler from getting into power, and they saw that their tax money funded genocide and stripped away their own rights regardless. So why would they do it again? Maybe if the Democrats ran someone who was only 50% Hitler, or only 10% Hitler, they might have a better chance. Better yet, run someone who is 0% Hitler. Take a look at existing and new policies. Ask, does this benefit more than 1/3 of the population? If no, campaign against it. I hate how the term populism has become synonymous with fascism. Advocating for the general populace and actually following through to benefit the vast majority of the population should not be lumped into the same category as conducting genocide. In case you missed it, in case I'm not being blatantly clear. Rapist and attempted coup Donald Trump is 95% Hitler. Rapist genocide Joe Biden, genocide Kamala Harris, and genocide George Bush Jr. were all 90% Hitler. Drone genocide Obama was 50% Hitler. Rapist Bill Clinton was 20% Hitler. Andrew Yang and Al Gore were 10% Hitler. Bernie Sanders was 5% Hitler. The way he endorsed the rigged electoral system makes me think he can't actually be 0%. Canada has many 80% Hitler prime ministers and candidates. Heck, we were even doing our own genocide in the 1990s, so we must have at least a few 95% Hitler prime ministers in our history. We're no better. Same rigged electoral college system. Same choice between high percentages of Hitler candidates. Same issues with billionaires and homelessness. So I ask again, I'm begging you, please provide a solution other than guillotines.